Hey, youth pastor friends, welcome to 7 healthy rhythms for every healthy and successful student minister. Listen, these are the things I want you to know and do on a week-to-week basis in student ministry. There's a lot of stuff that could be done, and this, I think, is a helpful guide to thinking about the strategy of the work you want to get done. So real quick, hi, I'm Zach. I'm the student ministry specialist for Lifeway students, and I've got some helpful tips for you. So let's jump in and just talk about what does it mean to balance a busy schedule. In a season like we're in right now, there's a lot of questions about getting the work done. But what's most important? What do we get done first? How do we get it all done? And so in this session, we're going to talk about some of the things that I think are the most important to give you a framework for your work. The things that I think are the buckets you need to fill, if that's the way you want to think about it, or the ways in which you can structure your weeks to feel satisfied about moving the needle or gathering momentum in your leadership. There's a way to do it. I think it can be done. And here's some ways to identify the most important work, because I think 7 is enough. I think a lot of times we think about all the various tasks that we can do in ministry, or all the things that we feel obligated to do, all the opportunities that we could have to get things done. But I want to give you a strategy for thinking about your work. And I think there are 7 easy, not easy work, but easy to fill buckets for things competing for time in your week. So 7 is enough because hustle culture isn't ministry culture. I think for a lot of folks, we live in a time where everybody just thinks work harder, eventually all the hard work will pay off. But we know as ministers of the good gospel that it's not by the sheer effort of what we're trying to do that the best work actually gets done. We leave the transformative work up to the God that we listen to, and we structure our days in the way in which we've learned to in the biblical account. So I think the important thing to start with is that ministry is a marathon, not a sprint. You've heard that said. It's been in almost every conference that you probably have gone to. There's a session about the longevity and the importance in ministry. And I think it's not just about thinking of it in years, but the ways in which we spend our days and weeks. So the reason 7 is important, because I think 7 is a good biblical number. It's important for us to be encouraged and reminded in some of the ways in which we structure our week, because the work we fill each week with, whether you're part-time, full-time, or volunteering in some kind of student ministry role, no matter the level at which you are employed to do the work is not the call. So the thing that I would want to start with, one of my friends, Adam, is a minister. He's a second-generation minister. His father has also served in ministry. And the family saying for that family of ministers is the work is not the call. How you fill each day is not the only measure of faithfulness to the God that has called you to do good work in the life of the church or community that you're serving. The work you do for the ministry is not the measure of who you are. How many hours you put in is not the guarantor of growing ministry. I do think we need to work hard and give our full and best effort, but part of our best effort is a strategic effort, a rhythmic effort to give the most each week. Why? Because the work will change. And I think this is the part that's really important to have a strategy and not be just tossed about from day to day, is that there are new things that are going to come and go. This last year has taught us that some of the ways in which we did ministry were not the only ways we could do ministry. We've rethought how we communicate, how we organize, how we gather, how we disciple, how we evangelize. And so the work needs a structure enough that could be shaped and changed so we don't feel overrun or overwhelmed by all the possibilities, but we are working out of a clear focus and vision for the ways in which we are trusting God to work and handing over our effort to the ways in which God has called us to transform in our community. We plan, we prepare, we program, we teach, but the most noble form is the calling that God has put on our lives. So you're going to serve in a lot of capacities. You're going to probably serve in a lot of places. I don't know how long you've been in ministry. If you're brand new, you may feel like the church that you're at is the church you'll be at forever. And if you are there for a long time, God bless you. But we will be in a variety of contexts, communities, and church congregations. And so now, in the life and the heart of a minister, at whatever age, wherever you're serving, here's some things that I want to give you as helpful ways of thinking about work, and not just thinking about work. Okay, so my friend Chad, who we do youth ministry booster stuff together inside of the community for Lifeway students, says that this is the quote that gets the most cred for what I've ever shared with our team. And it's that thinking about thinking, or thinking about our work, isn't work, but worry. Did you catch that? That to be thinking about what we're going to be doing isn't the actual work. It actually creates worry. Makes us feel anxious about the things that we need to get done. And so the reason to have a strategy or a rhythm of things that we need to get done frees us from the worry of the things that we think we need to get done. So for a lot of us, we battle for efficiency and productivity, but that starts in your mind or your mindset about what you're about to do. If you just wake up and get done everything everybody asks you to get done, you're always going to be left feeling empty, feeling defeated, feeling discontent. There's a certain kind of mentality we need to take about going after a set of goals, set of buckets to get the kind of work done we need to get done. So we're going to jump in, and I'm going to give you the rhythm and the strategy for the kind of work we need to have, because I think thinking about work on the weekly is just good and biblical, Sunday to Sabbath. So you can fill in some of the days. You may have a different day off than other folks, but I want you to start thinking first and foremost about how you work inside the week of the church calendar, of your work calendar. How do you spend your Sundays through Saturdays? How do you fill your Mondays and Thursdays? Instead of thinking about all of the year or each day, one slice at a time, let's think about the weeks in which we're setting up to be strategic about our work. Talking about it is healthy, and I think healthy is an important parameter for us as we dive into some of these little course times together. We want you to improve the health and the well-being of your leadership as you minister. So let's start with the Genesis account and just say that God shows us a clear example of how to be creative and do work that fills, and then also guides us to a place of rest. But we'll save that for the end. So however you're feeling right now, we're going to take a deep breath in, and that creative work, and breathing out, and launch into what I think is the first big bucket. Number one, pray early. It is really easy for one of the most important things that we can do to end up being the last thing we get done instead of the first thing we get done. So I want to name it first. Some folks might say, and make sure to always close your day with prayer. Let me start by saying that we need to get healthy in the ways in which we lead, and we get healthy in the ways in which we lead by praying early and praying daily. Number one, pray early. It's you cannot start enough days in prayer, and I think not enough ministers spend enough time in prayer. You can look at this and think, man, I'll get to it later, or I'll pick a day of the week for it. But the encouraging thing that I would give you is that every morning, whether it's at home in your little home workspace or office, or if you're making your way to the church office, before you dive into endless emails or returning phone calls or a meeting, would you carve out of some of the time in your week a chance to pray every day early? I think this is the way in which we can get a clarity and a mindset to listen first for what God would speak to us before just jumping into a task or a to-do list. If it's not getting done first, it will probably go missing. So number one, and the 7 things that I think need to be healthy in getting your rhythm of work done as a student minister, is to pray early. Okay, number 2, first thing first, prayer. Second thing first, disciple students. I know it's like, this seems like, man, Zach, that's a huge thing. That covers everything. And it covers a lot, but I think for so many of us, we pray, and then everything else we do, we think about discipling students. And so we stuff, or we overcram this one topic into a lot of the other things that we're going to jump and talk into. It seems obvious, but if you look back at your time, it's often the thing that gets added at the bottom of the list of other tasks that we do instead of central in how we're thinking about the things that we're planning. I know that you've got stuff to plan for Sunday. I know that there's probably a program on Sunday night or Wednesday night. There's probably campus outreach, other things. But what are the things on a weekly basis that are discipling students? Right now, in the life of what you're doing, write those things out. Name those things. Speak those things. Where am I discipling students? Where are students being discipled in the life of what we're doing? Not just the events, not just the outreach, not just the happenings. Where is the discipleship work happening? It's in our title to be a pastor and a minister, but sometimes this discipling work can get diminished, and we need to be about it. So the thing that I would push back on is that this is not one thing you can divide up 7 different ways. I think this is the lens in which you see a lot of what you're trying to get done through. So whether that's your small group over breakfast or a Bible study that happens in your home on a Monday night, or if it's Sunday school groups or small groups in the midweek, where are the discipleship efforts and how can you put your best energy into those things? There needs to be a pipeline, a process, and a philosophy of ministry that come out of the things based on our view and lens for how we are discipling students. If you are giving more than 1/7 of your week to this, you're missing out on a lot of the things that undergird this. Discipling student cannot just be your only task and responsibility. It's the framework, the lens, the strategy for why you're doing some of the other things that we're going to jump into. So number 2 is disciple students. I know it seems a little bit counterintuitive, but the truth is you need a plan for how you're going to grow students in their faith in the life of your ministry. It cannot just be done in the week to week. Discipling students requires a pipeline process and plan from you, from middle school to high school or from freshman to senior year. How do you want students to grow, and where are the places they can move from just being a part to growing deep roots in what God's truth has for them? One of the best ways to do that is number 3, parent communication. You need a plan for discipling students, and part of that plan is communicating with their parents and guardians. Whoever is the responsible caretakers for the students you have in your ministry, the big bucket that you should be getting done early in the week, and often, and definitely I think in some version of a weekly communication, is the way in which you're going to communicate with parents, and there needs to be a plan for it. It's fun to be around students. They have a great energy and they're exciting, but parents have so much insight and discipling time for their students. If you have family units in your church that are a worshiping, serving, growing family, how are you serving them in the ways in which they are growing in their discipleship? That starts not just by communicating the announcements and events and happenings in your ministry, but are you giving them the tools and the resources they need to continue the discipleship work from Sunday to Sunday inside their home, on car rides, and in conversations in their home? So I would just share that at Lifeway students, we have a parent partner resource that is a ready-made resource for you to customize to get to your parents that are inside your ministry, that looks like it comes from you, to not just give them updates about the ministry or to communicate the happenings, but good scriptural truth, prayer, and application to start conversations that are faith-filled and faith-forming inside their homes on a weekly basis. It's been a blessing in our own families, and it's been, I think, a real powerful tool for a lot of student ministers that don't know where to start, but they know that their parent ministry starts by expanding the communication beyond just what's happening to how we can help in the process of discipling students. It's a great jumping off point for a lot of folks to get started, and I'll make sure and include links to it down below. So number 3 is parent communications, and what are the ways that you can be a partner in ministry and all the ways in which you love and care for the families inside of your church. Number 4, team meetings. I cannot stress to you enough the importance of having the right amount of team meetings. Now, some of you, this means maybe you feel like you're having too many meetings. For some, you wish you had some different meetings. But on a weekly basis, you need to have a plan for the ways in which you're going to meet with your team. That starts first with your first team, the staff and colleagues that you work with. If that means the senior pastor and you meet, if that means that the student ministry team meet, it's the people that you're serving with on a weekly basis. It's the folks in the office. It's the people that are checking in about the work of the church on days that aren't Sunday or Wednesday or whenever programming is scheduled. You need those check-ins, and you also need the weekly check-ins with whatever staff, intern, or volunteer team you might have. These can be short meetings, and I think one of the biggest blessings of the last year is that we've realized how efficient short video conference, Zoom and Google Meets can be. These don't have to be long, but we need to be in front of our people and hearing from our people on a weekly basis. Too much can happen from week to week. We need short, scheduled check-ins to learn and grow together. Don't neglect your staff team, and don't put off meeting with those that are serving with you. Trade your long meetings for meaningful meetings. Don't have long meetings unnecessarily, and don't feel like every meeting has to be intense. These are just opportunities to check in and update and receive updates from those that you're serving with. It is vitally important, and I think in this new era of working together, having short and efficient weekly check-ins, both with our staff and some of our volunteer team, or maybe even some one-on-ones from those that lead and serve, are vitally important for the ways in which we are efficient in our communication, vision casting, and growth as a ministry team. Ministry is usually full of a lot of opportunities and programs, happenings, and events, and it's really important for your team at home to know what's going on. And so I would just say one more meeting to have every week is your family team meeting. So whether that's you and the folks you live with, or a spouse and kids, whoever is your family team, they need to be aware on a weekly basis what's next in the life of ministry and how it's going to impact the family. I think it cannot be stressed enough that we need to say out loud and often how much we are committing to, and probably sometimes need to run by what we have dreams for in the ministry with our family team. On Sunday nights, my wife and I sit down with a calendar to do family business meetings. Some of that's about money, some of that's about weekly schedule with the kids, and a lot of that's about ministry and, for her profession, teaching at school. We need to know what's going on, and it takes weekly check-ins to stay fully aware of each other's lives and schedules. So staff team, leader team, family team, have the right number of meetings, both in frequency and duration. I'm not advocating for long, endless meetings, but I think short, focused, frequent meetings can be really beneficial. So don't neglect those things, and make sure you've got enough time for team meetings. Number 5, lead your leaders. Again, the work of ministry cannot fall solely on your shoulders. Some of the responsibility will fall squarely on your shoulders, but you must be a person who's pouring into investing your leaders. The most surefire way to grow your ministry is to invest deeply and honestly with those that are serving in your ministry, whether that's a paid intern or a volunteer college student, or a mom, dad, uncle, or grandparent that loves student ministry and wants to grow and learn. The ways in which you invest weekly in your leaders is the ways in which you will grow your ministry. This might look like having a rotating meeting with 1 or 2 leaders a week, and then over the course of a month or a couple months getting to meet with everyone. But you need to find meaningful ways to meet with your leaders, either in small groups or individually, to help them grow, nurture, and coach up the ways in which you want to get everything out of them that you see in both their potential and their capacity. So the folks that love your ministry, and they love you, they love serving with you. So find ways to extract the most out of them by building them up and investing in them. I think one of the biggest growth barriers for student ministers, especially when starting out, is to turn the corner from being the direct minister to all the students to being a minister to those that minister to the students in their church. Finding ways to not just be the student pastor, but the pastor of the student ministries, the minister of ministering to students is a dynamic change that will allow you to engage with more students and help your adult leaders fulfill a role that's not just chaperoning or standing in the back of the room as security. Help those folks see the deep value of leading a small group, teaching a Bible study, mentoring and discipling students, so that that number two vision, that lens of what does it mean to disciple students at our church, can be fulfilled through many and not just through one. You need to be a coach and compassionate pastor for those that lead in your ministry. You should know about their lives, know about their struggles, know about the ways in which you can care and support them. You will have a lot of students come through in the next few years. What a great goal to have your leaders stick through generations of students because they love serving with you. Number 6 is this: self-development. You need to have something to give your people, and that starts by having a full cup yourself. That sounds super selfish, and this sounds like it should happen outside of work time, but I think an important piece of your work is you. The ways in which you can serve your church, serve your students, starts from the ways in which you're growing in learning. If you run out of things to give those that you are serving, you will not last long either in the church or for the benefit of serving the ministry or the community. Whether this is scheduling some meetings with just yourself, this is a secret trick or a tip that I would share. At least at one point during the week, schedule a lunch or coffee that's with you. If that's a chance to listen to a podcast that's educational and growing, that's a chance to read a book that's challenging, or to dive into the Word, not for a sermon, not for a talk or a teaching, but just for you to grow, I would have a lunch or coffee meeting weekly with yourself as a way in which to pour in, to be built up in what you're learning and growing through. There are too many great virtual, digital, learning resources of all styles, whether you want to read, watch, or listen on a weekly basis. Be engaging with some great content that builds you up, that challenges you with big questions, and holds you accountable for the growth that you need to be the kind of leader that you want to be. Whether it's something that's a super esoteric theological topic, or a leadership book, or something outside the bounds of ministry that you think might be a creative impulse or innovative opportunity, this is a really important piece of the healthy rhythms of work, because expanding your skills and understanding weekly is the way in which you can grow at a rate that you will have something to give back. You can't do it all at once. It's hard to play catch up for, but in the diet of being a healthy minister, one of the things that's really key and important is what you're being fed on or fed with. So give some time each week for you to learn, feed, and grow. Okay, so number 7, plan ahead. Much like number 6, there needs to be a part of your week that seems a little bit selfish, but it's really important. You need an afternoon, a morning, or a lunch of what some friends have called porch time, or sometimes have been called planning time. This is time to dream, time to think ahead, and not be buried in the grind of what feels like needs to get done by 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock that day. If this is the same time every week, excellent. Or if this is just a thing that you always commit to schedule on a week-to-week basis, but weekly, commit to planning ahead 3 months, 6 months. I know that may be really hard to do in this season, and you may feel like that's the last thing that I want to think about or try to do when I've made so many different plans. I would encourage you, it's more important now than ever to keep your head lifted up, to gather some vision about where we're trying to get to, and try to address some things before they come knocking on your doorstep. Whether that's long-term plans for a camp or an event, a mission or a trip, or maybe even some of the ways in which you want to guide that discipleship process, that pipeline, that philosophy. There needs to be some planning ahead to prevent you from only doing ministry in the week to week. As much as I want you to work weekly in ministry, I don't want you to feel buried just in the week to week things that need to get done. If we can only make it from Wednesday to Wednesday, we'll lose sight of the big goals that we're about. So you need weekly time to lift your head up and plan ahead. And a lot of us struggle in the trough of win and lose when we don't plan ahead. And it's important for us to keep the plan going to nurture the encouragement and the vision that we have of what it's really about. If we live in the win-loss of Wednesday to Wednesday, we will lose in the effort to do healthy, good ministry. You're going to have some down weeks, but if you can keep a clear vision about where we're headed and what we're about, there is great hope for you yet. So where are we going? Where can we be? How are we doing? One of the other aspects of this porch time or this planning time is to have some evaluation time. Not just what we're going to do, but what hasn't been working to make space for what needs to get done. It's really important that we gather enough distance and space from the things that we know we need to maybe delete, cut, or eliminate. Again, vision is what we don't do. We've said it on the podcast, we've shared it in some blogs, but in this moment, the porch time and the planning ahead time, it is vitally important that we find ways to evaluate, sometimes eliminate, but then create a plan that is beyond just the week-to-week work. So number 7 is to plan ahead. And those are the 7 things. But let me give you one more. So the reason that we plan in this way, the reason we talk about health and rhythms and weekly work is I want you to feel good about your rest. In just a brief pastoral moment, I would just share a lot of youth ministries I think are worried. A lot of youth ministers, student pastors are worrisome because we try to do a little bit of work all the time. And we toss and we turn and we tugged and we're pulled by all the obligations that we think we need to get done. The stuff that needs to get done somehow always finds a way of getting done. The encouragement for you that I would share in this moment is that we work hard to do these things to be done, to enjoy the rest that we have each week. The Genesis account of God's creative work models rest. If there is not a day in your week that you are unplugging from your laptop, turning off your phone, and maybe even temporarily deleting all your social media apps and turning text to do not disturb, then take the time to do so. You need rest, not just a long nap, not just sleeping in, but a day and time to delight in the goodness that God has given you, to see the blessings that God has offered you, and to break from what will feel like endless work. In being called to ministry, there are more people to serve and more to do than you can get done in a week. And so in a humble act of worship and trust for who God is and who we are not, would you work hard to fill these 7 buckets and then enjoy a day of rest? And then the next week, pick it up and start all over again, Lord willing. This is the way in which we can find health, growth, and success in ministry. I am so thankful for the work that you do. I'm so thankful for the ways in which you love and care for students, your local church, and your community. I hope this has been a help in framing out your week. Check the digital resources attached to this video resource for ways in which you can map out the days of your week to be productive, healthy, and find the good rest that God promises for those that work faithfully for Him.